Hello out there and welcome to Pcgtv Sports Time with Jerome. My name is Jerome Autry. What are we talking about today? Today is the final of the UEFA Champions League match between PSG and Inter Milan in Munich. 7 p.m. kickoff time. Who is going to win? I don't know. In the studio is someone who has followed European football. In fact, he follows European football better than I do. I'm a very passive follower of the game. He's a passionate follower of the game, a very keen one. He's in the studio to talk about the UEFA Champions League, and we will see who will be champion after his analysis. Don't go anywhere. Short break. We'll be back. Welcome back. As we usually do, we start with the scripture for the day. And today we are still reflecting on Solomon's wise words. And I take you to Proverbs chapter 16, verses 8. It says, better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. It's better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. God doesn't reward honesty. And so, whatever you have, the Bible says contentment is great gain. Be content with what you have than to use dubious means to acquire riches. It will go anyway because the same Bible says ill-gotten gain doesn't last. We'll go for another break. When we come back, we will look at the Champions League with our guest. So as I was telling you, we are back here to look at today's UEFA Champions League final match. And again, as I was telling you, with someone who knows what it is when it comes to European football. He's been covering, watching, and following every bit of this year's or this season's Champions League. I'm talking about Joy Sports editor Fentio Tahiru. Fent, thanks for the opportunity.
Of course.
Thanks for granting
Yes.
our invitation.
Yes.
So, like I was saying, the Champions League is today.
A
7
big
p.m.,
one.
Saturday, 31st May.
Yeah.
PSG versus Inter. I know the simple question will be who will win, but I will ask that now. I want us to look at this being the first final since the format was changed.
Yes.
As someone who follows Euro football very well, is it too early to offer any analysis of whether or not it was good to change the format?
Oh, I think we've seen enough evidence that this format is actually quite interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the beginning, I remember match day one, watching the games. I thought it was too chaotic. You know why? Because there were too many big teams that were playing at the same time. I'm like, if this was group stages, only two groups will play today. And it's easy to follow the games, right? But with the league phase, it's like every match is played on Tuesday. And then the next Wednesday, you have another maybe 8 teams. Because it's 32 teams. That's a long list of teams that have to play in 2 days.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought it was hard to follow, but that was more personal. But as it progressed, it became more and more interesting.
Was it not because you, or let me say, football fans have been used to a certain format in the past?
Yes.
And this being new,
yes,
we were going to struggle to accept it.
Exactly. But also, I think it was also because the competition had been expanded. The new format, it didn't just come with a new format, it also came with an expansion.
Okay.
So there were more teams involved now. So we had so much more work to do or too many more games to catch up.
What
so it became very difficult.
What would you say was the wisdom behind the change of the format and the expansion?
Money.
Okay.
Because then they realized, I think UEFA realized that the more, because, television broadcasters pay for a number of matches. So the more games,
the more money.
The more money. So this was a purely financial motivation. And they hide it behind, we want to expand it and give other smaller teams the opportunity to participate. There's always the logical reason and the real reason.
But nobody's going to reject the argument that small opportunities
you understand?
Opportunities should be given to the smaller teams. Nobody will reject
that. So it's hard for you to argue against it because indeed, it means that there would be more smaller teams participating in it. But the thing is, those smaller teams that are participating in it, you realize, Jerome, that for those countries, no matter how small they are, even in their countries, there will be television stations that will be begging to show their
Of
matches.
course,
Thank
of
you.
course.
So whichever way you look at it, there's always demand for those games. So maybe globally, you and I might not be interested in watching Red Star Belgrade versus Celtic,
Yeah.
but you go to Scotland or you go
It's
to
big.
Serbia, thank you.
It's big because
That's
I
the
mean,
match they want to watch.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Serbian TV or Scottish TV,
It's the UEFA Champions League on Serbian TV.
thank
I
you.
mean, who would you want to watch when
Thank
their
you.
team is involved?
Thank you.
It makes
So
sense.
whichever way you looked at it, it was a really good way for UEFA
Okay.
to make more money. And it was their reaction to the Super League idea.
Yeah.
Because this was what the Super League wanted to do. They wanted to create the competition for only an elite group of teams, but the only difference is that they didn't want any teams to suffer relegation. They wanted permanent members, and then they'll be admitting teams every season based on invitation. So they kicked against that. But now UEFA has introduced a competition where they are also looking at ranking of teams, and they call it so the league phase. And teams don't play each other twice.
Yeah.
So there's so many that every team plays 8 matches, but you never repeat a game against any team.
Okay.
So the idea is that you play too many different teams, so it allows you to play so many of the best instead of just playing against 3 other teams as it was in the previous format.
So coming from that arrangement and then the fact that there were unknown teams or teams you would say wouldn't have had a chance of playing in the previous format, would you say it was good for any of them? I mean, were there any standouts?
In the end, we saw that. Not in the latter stages, though. That's always the thing, right?
Yeah.
In the latter stages, the very team that would have made it out, even in the previous format, were still the teams that made it out. But in the group phase, we saw some exciting games. For example, we saw the emergence of Stade Brestois, or Brest for short. The French team. They made a lot of really good name for themselves. They performed superbly. There were many people's favorite teams, some for good reasons, others for quite some, I'm not sure, but you know how silly people can be.
Yeah.
But they produced some really good performances, and they had a very, very good team. We also saw some games, including like AC Milan's game against Real Madrid in the group phase, where they beat them at the Bernabeu. Ordinarily, you don't see that. Even when the two of them play against each other, but you never see that happen. We saw some really good, much smaller, unknown teams put up some decent performances. And then we also saw what we saw, which was the superb performances of teams that have shown themselves to be very good league teams. Liverpool topped the group in the league phase of the competition, giving credence to their performances in the Premier League, that when it is in the league format where you have to play against several teams, they are superb. Then we saw that in the knockout stages, they're not so good after all, getting kicked out by Paris Saint-Germain. So it had its advantages. It showed us certain things. It showed some much younger teams and much unknown teams to us. But at the end of the day, I think that once it got to the last 16, we also started to see the emergence of what has been the trend over the last few years, that certain teams will always be those teams. They will always be the ones at the last stages of the competition.
I mean, we'll go for a short break, but before we go, I want to take your views on the last 16. Were there any surprises? I mean, like those who made it and those who didn't make it?
That's the thing. You look at the last 16, and all the teams that made it to the quarterfinals were teams that you expected them to make to the quarterfinals. So Arsenal go through, and PSG go through. I think the biggest surprise has to be Liverpool. For me, I think that has to be the biggest upset of the round of 16. How do you top the league phase
in the
of a 32-team competition?
Also performing well in the EPL.
And
you don't make it.
In the very next stage, first knockout round of the competition, you get kicked out. And they lost to PSG. a team with very little experience in this competition in terms of the squad that they have. Because PSG took a very divergent approach to the squad rebuild after Messi and co left.
Okay.
You know, they acquired the club in 2011. They approached the whole squad building with this, you know, let's buy big players kind of mentality. And it didn't quite work out. And then after Messi and Neymar and Mbappe all left, they started to rebuild with the mentality of making the team, the spine of the team French, making it younger. And the way that they kicked out Liverpool was quite surprising. But I think for round of 16, like you said, the biggest surprise has to be Liverpool's inability to get past them.
Okay. I mean, football is always bound to spring surprises.
Oh, yes,
I mean,
always.
It's the nature of the game. We'll go for a short break. When we come back, I want us to skip that point and go into the last four. There's some very interesting developments in there. And I mean, like I said, I'm not a passionate follower of European football, but I was forced to keep an interest in some matches, and I'll tell you. Welcome back, and it is the Champions League final discussion with my friend Fentio Tahiru. Fent, let's look at the last four. So the last four had Arsenal, PSG, Barcelona, and Inter Milan. You know, it came as a kind of surprise to me when Arsenal made it to the last four. Was it a surprise for you?
Yeah. I think so. I think it was the biggest surprise of the quarterfinal stage, mostly because of the team they faced.
Yeah,
they faced Real Madrid.
Yes,
European royalty.
Yeah, they almost behave like they have a birthright to the Champions
League. Won the trophy 15 times. And we all thought, okay, this is the end for Arsenal, right?
They're going to be crucified.
You know,
well done for getting here.
Thank you.
You go beyond.
It's Arsenal. You've never reached the Champions League. You've never won the Champions League. You only reached one final in your history. Previously, they had only reached 2 semi-finals in the competition's history. I'm coming out against Real Madrid. What are the odds? You have no chance. They've got an experienced manager, Carlo Ancelotti. He's won Champions League with AC Milan, won Champions League with Real Madrid. You know, no chance, right?
I had a Madrid fan say, once we get to the last, at this stage, you should know, we'll dismiss everybody and take the trophy away.
You know, and then Arsenal shocked everybody.
Yeah.
The first leg performance was superb. But even after the first leg thumping, convincing victory, there were still people that thought Real Madrid were capable of doing a comeback with their famous remontada. You know, and the whole week, you remember the conversation Jude Bellingham said, the most used word in the Real Madrid dressing room that week was remontada, the comeback. Real Madrid, the day of the game, Real Madrid was scaring everybody. They were posting old videos of all their previous comebacks, and everybody was shaking. Even those of us who were not Arsenal fans were like, Real Madrid are about to do it again.
What is to befall Arsenal?
My brother. And then Arsenal going to walk into the Bernabeu, and then they don't only qualify, they win as well. And you see, that first leg, you look at the performance of our own Ghanaian brother, Thomas Partey, in that 3-0 victory, and you will doff your heart. Look, you can look back and say, okay, Declan Rice scored 2 superb free kicks. Jerome, what are the odds that you would score 1 free kick against Thibaut Courtois and then double it in the same game?
It doesn't usually happen.
They can give him 1,000 more of such opportunities, and there's no guarantee he would convert to.
You know, talking about
that's how football is.
Talking about Partey, let me take your thoughts on this. I mean, I think I came across a video. I don't know whether you share the same sentiment, where the English press, I mean, guys within the Arsenal setup and some people in the English media, more like looked down on what Partey did, and rather were projecting Rice.
Yes, and to be fair, Declan Rice scored a beautiful brace, 2 wonderful free kicks, which were crucial in the victory. You know, Marino scored the 3rd goal. They won 3-0. But everybody saw that the one who really ran the engine of that team that day was Thomas Partey. And yet, like you said, all the media did in the aftermath of that was celebrate Declan Rice, celebrate other players, and there was barely a mention of Thomas Partey. And a lot of people got very upset.
Yeah.
But those of us with internal knowledge of the nuances around Thomas know exactly why that's happening.
Why?
Because Thomas is being protected.
Okay.
Because there have been previous posts that they've made about Thomas where the comments have been vile in nature.
Yeah. So negative.
So negative.
So they didn't want to expose
So in
him
order to
that.
protect him, the club just decide that no matter how much good he does, we don't want to put him in the mainstream media or on social media to give these abusers the opportunity to throw
That's
vile
great.
messages at them. So instead of doing that, so they just prefer to rather put all of the write-ups about his performances. They always prefer to put that on the website.
Yeah.
Because the website doesn't come with the comment section.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's great. But then, so Arsenal proceeds or progresses
Yes.
to the semi-final,
Last four.
and they come face to face with PSG.
They do come face to face with PSG.
And whatever firepower that was in them is extinguished by PSG. Was that any surprise?
I would say yes and no. I think PSG had shown, even in their previous knockout rounds coming into that semi-final encounter, that if there is a team that is capable of scoring so many goals, it's them. And Arsenal's biggest strength previously also all season has been their defense. It's not so much of their goal-scoring ability.
They don't concede.
They just don't concede. But PSG have shown that they have enough dynamism in their attack to create problems for Arsenal. And that was exactly what they did. You know, you look at that PSG front line, and there's danger everywhere. Ousmane Dembele, very ambidextrous. You can't predict the way he plays. Desiree Doué, a young player that's come into this PSG team, and he's been phenomenal. In January, they signed Kvisha Kvaratskhelia from Napoli, another wonderful winger. You know, and they've got Fabian Ruiz, one of the most creative midfielders. And then they have a midfield too, Vitinha and João Neves, who are capable of matching the energies of any player.
So, Fent, you know, so enough of Arsenal in the semi-final. PSG, I mean, were overpowering or domineering, and they made it. But let's look at the other side.
Yeah.
So, for me as a passive observer, watching Barca, I think before the game started, I felt like, no, Barca has what it takes to, even if they're going to have it difficult, they will dismiss these guys eventually. It turns out that Barca had to struggle to even get a face-saving result. Was that also any surprise?
Well, I think that game was a big surprise, the Inter match. Because over the two legs, Inter progressed, listen to this, 7-6 on aggregate.
Yeah, lots of goals.
7-6 on aggregate. I think, Jerome, that is the greatest UEFA Champions League football match I have ever watched.
Lots of people said that, and I read that. Was it mainly because of the second leg? I mean, the outcome of the second leg and the way things panned out.
I think over the two legs, those two games, that is, as a fixture, that is the greatest fixture. Because this was, both of them, like both, the two, as in that fixture, that pair of matches is the greatest knockout game in the history of the UEFA Champions League.
Do you think Barca lost the plot in the first game? I mean,
they did. You see, and this is where experience counts. In the first leg, where the match ended 3-3, Barcelona had it under control. They were more than capable of running away with the victory. But there were moments where when you take the lead as an experienced team, experience will show you that you need to slow down the momentum.
Okay.
All right? And deny the other team any sort of momentum building opportunity. Barca don't do that. The team that is built on attack, even when they lead by 3-0,
They still
but
want to
they
attack.
still want to attack. You don't play football like that.
Okay.
And that is the DNA of Barcelona. And that is perhaps one of the reasons that let them down. Even in that second leg, they still had it under control.
Yeah.
Because before that equalizing goal in the 94th minute or so to make it 3-3 to take the game into extra time, Barcelona had several opportunities to have controlled the game and retained possession and denied Inter Milan any opportunities to get on the ball. Because the first way of preventing the opposition from scoring is to deny them of the ball. Barcelona are leading by 3-2. There was a moment where I think Pedri, one of the young midfielders, had the ball, and the Barcelona were leading by 3-2 in the 93rd minute.
Incredible.
Now,
how
at
do you...
this point, Pedri gets the ball, okay, and he passes it to Lamine Yamal. Then he points back and indicating to Lamine Yamal that perhaps send the ball back to another Barcelona player. Lamine Yamal doesn't listen. He cuts inside, only sees a shot. He could have scored because that ball rattled the goalpost. It hit the post. If he scored, no problem. Because if he scored, it's 4-2, game over, right?
Game over, yeah.
Good. But he doesn't score, right? But ball hits the post, gets back into play. Inter take the ball, whips one upfield, cross comes saying defender scores 3-3.
You know, I love the description here, but it re-emphasizes or emphasizes your point about Barca being too attacking minded. Because, I mean, 93rd is such a crucial game. You are leading.
Why are you going to score?
If you come to Ghana and learn some delayed
tactics, or go to North Africa, right?
Yeah, I mean,
an experienced team will not do that.
No way.
An experienced team will never do that.
Let me share this story before we go for the break, and then we'll come and continue this story. Look, a former commentator, a very respected commentator in Ghana here. He used to be a commentator. Neil Antevanapoy,
yes,
now a politician, commentated, if I can use that word, a game between, I think, Gapoha and an Algerian side back in the 90s, I think 97 or so. And the Algerians got a goal. I'm narrating this story because of the Barca experience you are sharing here. Look, the Algerians got a goal here. Those were the days Kobnayaro was playing for Gapoa or so. The Algerians would not even bring the ball to the Ghanaian side's territory.
They just passed it among themselves.
And I remember Neil Antevanapoy saying something like, if he had his way, he'd go onto the field and kick the ball into the Ghanaian side so they can have play. No.
You deny, exactly. Yeah. The best way to defend is deny the opposition the ball.
Anyway, we'll go for a short break. When we come back, enough of how Barca were kicked out and how Inter got into the final. We'll focus on Inter versus PSG Champions League final. Very interesting conversation we are having here. I like how fate has brought life to how Barca lost in that semi-final. I mean, I'm not a Barca fan. I just watch these matches. I'm the only one who can support Liverpool and Manchester at the same time because I really don't care who wins. But Barca lost in very dramatic fashion. That is to say, Inter won also in a dramatic fashion. And here they are in the final with PSG, who probably didn't have a lot of drama to deal with in their semi-final clash. But Fent, the two sides here must do something to win the game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, only one team can win the title. Who do you think it will be? I mean, maybe we can look at the strengths of each side and see what will count for them, and also look at their weaknesses and see what could go against them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an interesting encounter, and the venue itself will play a significant role.
How?
The last 4 times the Champions League final has been played in the Munich Stadium or in Munich, there's been a new winner of the Champions League.
That counts for PSG.
It does count for PSG. They've never won the Champions League in their history. even for the last time that a French team won the Champions League was back in '93.
That's a long time. Then we are talking about
Abedi Pele.
Marseille.
Yes, Olympique Marseille in
Yeah.
'93. '93 is what, 32 years ago.
Coincidentally, they played an Italian side, AC Milan.
AC Milan.
Very interesting.
Jerome. There is no guess. The coincidences don't end there.
Yeah, okay.
Guess where the
Give me
venue
more.
of that game was?
It was in Munich.
It was Munich back in '93.
So a lot of replays here.
A lot of replays. So that is something that definitely counts in favor of Paris Saint-Germain. Inter Milan, they have won this competition 3 times, but the last time they did was 2010.
Yeah, 15 years
and
ago.
that was under Jose Mourinho, exactly. So, but they made the final 2 years ago against Manchester City.
Yeah.
So, this represents a really perhaps a last opportunity for a bunch of the players that were in that particular final, because a lot of the players that they had in that 23 final are in this final as well. Lautaro Martinez is Dumfries, and all these other players that have been in this team for a long time. That squad is experienced. Some might interpret that to be old. 41% of all the minutes that Inter Milan have played in the Champions League this season have been played by players over the age of 30.
Wow.
So that is a bunch. That is
do you think that counts for them, or
it does count? It counts against
of
them, and it counts in favor of them in that sense. It is not an all positive or an all negative affair. It counts for them because then that means they are very experienced, and to win a major competition like European competitions, you sometimes need the experience, because game management is important. You need to pick the moment, the right moments. And for players who have been in that scenario multiple times, it comes more naturally to them. They know what the right moments are to attack, to defend, to hold back, to push forward, and those kinds of situations. But it also means that if the game travels beyond, this is the last game of the season. If the game travels beyond certain minutes, they might begin to feel it in their legs.
And that's where PSG might have the advantage.
Exactly. That's where PSG might have the advantage, because they have a relatively young team. Both teams are coming into the competition with different kinds of motivations. Inter Milan want to desperately win a trophy. The Champions League represents their only chance of a trophy this season, Jerome. They've had a horrible season in the sense that they've had opportunities to win cups, and they have let it slip. They don't want that to happen one more time. They were in the semi-finals of the Coppa Italia, and they lost, surprisingly, to AC Milan. Then they lost the Scudetto by 1 point to Napoli only last Friday.
They've lost too many, opportunities to win a title.
Exactly. Only and by 1 point.
Yeah.
So the Champions League cannot slip. Because if it slips, Simeone, that's the last chance to win a trophy this season.
Okay.
So that's where the extra motivation is coming from. They need to finish the season with something. Without a win, they would finish the season with nothing. PSG, on the other hand, have the opportunity to do something unprecedented, to win a quadruple. They have won everything available in France. They've won a domestic treble. They've won the French Cup. They've won the French Super Cup. They've won the French Ligue 1. And they want to add.
I mean, you and I have covered football for some time. A long time. Has there been an occasion where a club won everything domestic?
Yes.
Came on the continent and won it?
Yes.
4 trophies in a season?
Yes.
Man City?
Man City. Pep Guardiola's Barcelona.
Okay.
And Hansi Flick's Bayern Munich of 2020.
Okay.
They won every single trophy available.
So PSG will go into that hall of
fame. But no French club has ever done that.
Okay, they have.
So that's what they want to do, And even since the Qataris took over in 2011, they've made 1 Champions League final. and that was in 2020 when they lost to Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
And this is the second time they've made it here.
Okay.
In that period, they've played a lot of Champions League football. In that period, only 3 clubs have played more Champions League games
Damn.
than PSG, and yet they have nothing to show for it. They want to change that this time around. They have the talent, they have a coach, and even their coach is also looking for history, because if Luis Enrique wins, he would become only the 6th coach to win the Champions League with 2 different clubs.
Yeah,
because he won it with Barcelona in 2015. Okay. So everywhere you look, history beckons. Okay. And for me, I think it will be a very interesting encounter. I can guarantee you there will be goals.
Yeah.
PSG are capable of scoring. They will score.
Okay.
Inter Milan, they never trail for long. They never trail for long.
We saw the Barca experience.
They will come back.
Okay.
That is who they are.
Okay.
So listen, it's a difficult game to call.
Yeah, we have just about a minute to wrap up. We just have to wrap up. But tell me, a difficult game to call, you are saying. What does your hunch? I don't want any scientific analysis any longer. Just closing. What does your hunch?
I know what I want.
You know what you want?
Yes.
Which is?
I want Inter to win.
Okay.
I have a certain likeness for Italian clubs. I have an Inter jersey.
I like your honesty.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
But I have a friend when Kotoko is going to play those days.
Yeah.
And he knows I'm in bed, like proper in the team.
Yes.
You tell me, Jerome, you are on the team's bed in camp.
Yes.
What does your hunch tell you?
Uh-huh.
I don't want anything. Just tell me
what your hunch says.
And I'll tell him it doesn't look good.
Oh, God.
That's what you are saying here. It doesn't look good for PSG. Going by what you want.
I want Inter to win.
You never know.
I feel like they have been the best team in the competition this season.
Okay.
And it will be befitting for them to wrap up with a trophy.
Yeah.
But PSG's youngsters, man, I'm so afraid of them. Like, they don't respect Jerome.
That is the reality.
That's the problem. They will 10 you. So, look, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to. So,
Fent is an honest football pundit, sports pundit, a proper one. He knows his stuff. And I'm sure listening to him, watching him, you get that sense too. Fent, thank you very much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
And we would say, in thy light, there is light. We'll come your way again next week with an interesting conversation. Thanks and goodbye.